Welcome to the top 5 things you need to know about doulas. This is a part of the March of Dimes. It starts with Mom series. As we talk about what we need to know, we do know that March of Dimes aims to fight for the health of all moms and all babies. So I am Janai Norman. I'm a journalist, a writer, also a motivational speaker, but my proudest role is becoming a mother. I have 3 young kids, a 4-month-old, an almost 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and they are my pride and joy, and I'm so glad to be with you today. Wonderful to be joining together with other moms, because of course, as moms, we all need a community to lean on, people who we can turn to, who will listen and support us non-judgmentally, and we cannot do it alone. We absolutely should not have to do it alone. They say it takes a village for a very good reason. And March of Dimes is there for women at every stage of motherhood, even when things don't go according to plan, because we all try to plan, but so much is out of our control. So It Starts With Mom is an excellent resource for moms and moms-to-be and their families to help them along the way through pregnancy and beyond, on into motherhood. There is so much we feel like we need to know, but impossible to know everything. But we do know that to have healthy babies and families and communities, it really, in so many ways, it all starts with mom. So speaking of what we need to know, I'm looking forward to this conversation we're going to have. We've got 2 doulas on board, Sanyika Williams, as well as Kayla Natalie. Sanyika, the doula, is a certified birth and postpartum doula who specializes in birth support, lactation, and early postpartum with an emphasis on healing the postpartum body, which we continue to learn more and more about just how important that is. And Kayla is a certified birth doula, a mother, a content creator who dedicates her time to helping others through pregnancy, labor, and again, that also important postpartum time as a birth doula. Also joining us, Dr. Elizabeth Cherot, President and Chief Executive Officer of the March of Dimes, well-versed genius when it comes to all of these things that moms need to know. So thank you so much, Dr. Cherot. And March of Dimes recently conducted a Harris Poll survey that found that over 40% of respondents had never heard of doulas. And beyond being aware of doulas, understanding the role that doulas have it was mixed, with the majority of the people not sure what doulas do at all. So that's where we find ourselves today, with such a great opportunity to share everything that doulas do, that they provide, the supportive role that they play. So let's get this started. It also happens to be timed with World Doula Week, which is just perfect. So let's get started, because it all starts with mom. So thank you, ladies, for being here today and for talking about this. Let's start, Sanyika, with you. What is a doula for anyone who may not know?
A doula is a non-medical professional that comes in to support the birthing person and their family through pregnancy, through labor and delivery, the big labor and delivery day, and early postpartum. We come in to support with education, information, physical support, and emotional support. So we're an added person to the birth team.
Okay. And so, Kayla, can you expand on sort of the different roles that doulas can play as a woman transitions from pregnancy to postpartum and on?
Of course. So doulas, we are there for every part of it. We are different than the healthcare provider. We are going through the pregnancy with you. We are going through the labor with you. We don't have other patients that we have to attend to. We are there for your emotional support. We are there if you need anything. We are there to answer any questions that you may have. That's really what we do.
And Kayla, what does the training and certification for doulas look like?
A lot of certifications are out there. I got my certification through Allison, and I love it.
So, Dr. Cherot, from your perspective in the medical field, how is a doula different from other types of care partners?
Yeah. So listen, I've been a provider for almost 30 years, and it is fascinating to see doulas who work in the antepartum space, so during labor, or prior to labor, and really helping kind of that continuous care. I only have so much time in the office, and we know it takes a lot to get through a lot of education, a lot of information. Doulas can really spend more time, unfortunately, than I get to, but also to make sure that all those questions are answered, or that they're bringing up concerns with their provider. So that's that antepartum part. Yes, labor and delivery. I love how you said that big day, right? And it's a big day, and people have these incredible expectations around it sometimes. And right, we all think it's, cut to commercial and you're holding a child. It doesn't work that, and then it falls out, right? We know there's so much more to it, and so many questions and so having a doula be there as that partner. And again, I think it as that complementary and continuous care model. And then in that postpartum space, we've talked about this, Janai, you just don't recover in 6 to 8 weeks after having a baby. And there are so many, I remember my own child thinking about that umbilical cord and going, oh my gosh, how do I do this? What do I do? What am I supposed to do? And why is it blue? Right. So all of those questions can be answered. You don't, a lot of people will Google, right? A lot of people will call a provider. You have a doula who can help you kind of get through that. And then even more, right? It's not just the physical, it's really the mental aspect of this, which I would say in the last few years have really accentuated is so important, because there's so many changes happening and there's just too much information to even absorb, and having a support person, and along those lines. And it, family is one thing, and sometimes that can be an interesting juxtaposition to be in. To have a doula is really, I think, a phenomenal way to support mom all the way through. So that's how I think about it. And a lot of people say, oh, what about a midwife? That's another complementary model of care. But I think a doula adds a whole nother aspect to moms and birthing people.
So Sanyika, can you expand on that from your perspective as a doula, some of the benefits of having a doula, not just during, on that big day for labor and someone to advocate for you, but as someone is going through their pregnancy and that postpartum time, and why that's so important?
Absolutely. Just like what Dr. Elizabeth was saying, since we're there, we have a little bit more time with our clients. We can be the person that they reach out to in the middle of the night. That thought that pops up, they're like, wait, what about this? I was wondering about this. Instead of them going to Dr. Google, we try to keep them away from that, or at least talk them off the edge when they do go to Dr. Google, because it'll either be like, everything's fine or your baby's dying. So it's really, black and white if you go to Google it, but we can give them evidence-based information and also our own personal experiences, as I'm a mother as well, about how to navigate things and just kind of keep them calm. Just like, really, I like to say that we're kind of like the birthy BFF. Like, we don't get tired of talking about birth and what about this and what about that. We're here for we're here to give unbiased information. We can tell you about the 12 different types of butt paste and which one you want to go with and why. And so just extra air that comes in with unbiased support.
Okay. And so Kayla, with the different types of care providers that there can be, I think a lot of times people will get confused with, the difference between an OBGYN and a midwife and a doula and what everyone does and doesn't do. Can you talk about the role that doulas can play in, tandem with a midwife as well as with an OB and, at a home birth or birthing center and also in a hospital, all of those different ways?
Yeah, like you said, I love to call myself your birth BFF. I'm not a midwife. I'm not a medical professional. I can't give you medical advice, but I do have that education under my belt that I can be like, yeah, so you might want to do this or this. If you're okay, your baby is doing this. It's kind of a different relationship with your client.
Dr. Cherot, what does the research tell us about the facts when it comes to the benefits of a doula?
Yeah, I think we've known for some time that we have better outcomes when it comes to C-sections, when it comes to preterm birth. Everybody's nodding their head, right? We know these so we know these are the outcomes that we can really drive. And these are really important outcomes. 1 in 10 babies is born premature in this country. And we're doing a bad job we haven't improved it. It's actually at one of the worst rates we've had in some time. So how do we really affect that change? This is something that we need to start thinking about for our moms, to really think about how we can affect outcomes. And so that's where I start to get really excited. And this is not an adversarial role, right? This is a partnership. And that's what I get really excited about. We all want the best outcomes for our moms and for our babies. And so this is an added part to the care team that can help drive those outcomes. And so I get excited about, and then you start talking about breastfeeding. We know breast is best, and that there's a lot of work to be done there. Having done it, right? It's a lot of work, right? And so how do we set our moms up for the best success? And so, and how do we have really, there's so many things that doulas can do when it comes to mental health and that preventable mortality and morbidity. We know these are the areas that this can affect those change. So when I start thinking about some of those outcomes, I go right to C-section, I go right to preterm birth is probably the top two. And then I could start thinking about all the others that we know that have made a difference, especially in that postpartum space. I get really excited about. So I'm sure others want to chime in.
Well, I mean, do either of you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, actually. Oh, you go.
Just kind of going back to so many things, but just the emphasis on the postpartum. There's so many times when people are preparing for birth, they've got baby registries and they know what they want their birth to look like. And sometimes things go just as planned and sometimes they do not. And I like to make sure my clients understand what postpartum is going to look like, prepare them for it, because I personally got slapped across the face with postpartum. So just giving them like, okay, mom, you're gonna be down for the count. Like, you need to honor your postpartum body. And if you're not doing what you're normally doing, who's doing that? And everything can't necessarily go on your significant other, because that's a lot of things. So just really creating a postpartum team so that they're not taken by surprise and feel like they need to still be doing the things that they were normally doing pre-birth, because this is really they're born again. So this is a whole new body. This is a whole new person that is adjusting to postpartum, adjusting to their child, learning if they're choosing to breastfeed, which is a labor of love in and of itself. So emphasizing birth, pregnancy, but not forgetting postpartum, because the reality is postpartum is forever. I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, so I'm 9 years and 6 years postpartum.
Yeah. And Kayla, you wanted to add to that too?
Yeah, we're there for everything, but the one thing that I really love that we decrease is birth trauma. I went through my 3rd birth in 2022, and I unfortunately had a very traumatic birth. I wish I would have, hired a doula, but I had no idea what a doula was at the time. Until I researched about birth trauma, we can decrease that birth trauma going through it.
That is such an important point to make, because even just in our society, a lot of times the ideas that we get around birth, it shows it being traumatic. A woman screaming and just completely out of control. And too often in real life, women end up having these birthing situations that are not the most ideal, and they end up having birthing trauma, and that ties right into the maternal health crisis that this country is in. Dr. Cherot, how did we get here?
Oh, geez. That's a loaded question, right? I mean, listen, I having done this for a long time, I think part of it is not putting the patient at the center of the care. Right. And really looking at outcomes data. We haven't done that for some time. We do now more than ever. I think about what March of Dimes has done over its lifetime of changing even, our Born Too Soon campaign, and thinking about how, 39 weeks is we need to complete 39 weeks to be able to add it for a scheduled C-section, or, even to think about induction, is really giving a lot of data behind it all. And we haven't had a lot of data. I mean, we still don't have any data around fetal heart rate monitoring, for instance. I can keep going, right? I have so many thoughts on this, but the trend has been going in the wrong direction. We know that we need to have access to care. We know that cardiovascular disease, as well as chronic conditions are making things worse for moms. I think actually thinking about that postpartum as I love that you're talking about being 9 years postpartum. So I think I'm 19 years postpartum. And I think that it is absolutely right. Something that we build up as labor is this big day when it is more than just a day. And that postpartum period, I can't even believe we have only thought of as 6 to 8 weeks. Even a full year is right, extending for the Omnibus Act and extending Medicaid for that full year. We're finally getting there. Other countries are doing things so differently. Whether it's, helping beforehand where they're truly getting access, whether it's social determinants that we've been looking at, but also just talking about how we do things and how we approach things we're finally starting to have the conversation. I think other places across this country, obviously with better outcomes, have been doing things better. And we've really got to be leaning into moms and babies. We haven't prioritized them in this country. I think it's a window into healthcare. And we've got some real problems that if we don't start turning this around, it's going to be even bigger. So I'll get off my pedestal, Janai, but I think we got here over time. We have some real solutions we know that can affect change. One of them is doulas, really focusing right on that postpartum period. We know could make a huge difference. Passing that Omnibus Act has been huge for this, the 44 states that we have more to do. So excited to see that we lean in that space, but really knowing that advocating for midwives and doulas and others to get reimbursed on the financial standpoint is really important as well. We have to advocate for it because we know the real change happens right when we start really looking at policies, and that's where we have to lean in. So.
And one thing that I heard you say multiple times there was the word access. Yeah. Access is so important. So Kayla, for you, when someone is maybe exploring the idea of working with the doula and they've finally learned what it is and they're interested, what are some of the challenges to access that they can face? Because we know for so many Americans, cost is a huge barrier.
Oh yeah, cost. A lot of people just can't afford it. They can barely afford to live right now, let alone hiring a doula that goes through your pregnancy. We are seeing more and more people that cannot even afford to have children, let alone go and hire a doula. And so, just access in general is very hard to find.
Yeah. And Sanyika, can you talk about when you do have prospective mothers coming to want to work with you? What are some of the things that they ask you? If someone is looking to hire a doula, where should they look? What should they find out about this person to know if someone's a good match?
Yeah, one of the common questions I have, it's probably on Google, like what to ask a doula in a doula interview is like, what is your philosophy on being a doula? Pretty much a lot of people want to know, how did I come into it? And honestly, it was from my own experience and also the documentary, The Business of Being Born. And they would search Google, Instagram, Facebook, word of mouth. A lot of chiropractic offices are very much into doula, your lactation consultants, like those type of things. But typically they're taken to the internet, Google, and social media to find a doula. Then they're asking those types of questions. They want to know how long you have been a doula generally, when they're going to meet, when we'll meet them in labor. Of course, there's so many things that happen in between that time, but they kind of want to know, like, how long is your support? Are you going to be with me once you meet me? Is my clock starting? And every doula has they have the opportunity to create their own business. So these are all valid questions.
And Kayla, back to you. Tell me about how for you as a doula, you go about caring for a mother after labor when she is postpartum.
So right now I'm only doing, FaceTime postpartum, but I go about it in, if you have any questions in the middle of the night, my phone is always near my bed. I am picking up the phone. If you have any questions about the baby, about your postpartum, about your bleeding, let me know and I can answer those questions for you.
Because we know that is like one of you said that, you know, after giving birth, you're a whole new woman. You have birthed yourself now as a mother or a mother again. And there's so many things to sort through and try to figure out that you thought maybe you'd know, or you had no idea that you didn't know. So the role of doulas can be so invaluable. And so, Dr. Cherot, can you talk about why the March of Dimes supports doulas and what you're doing to lift up doula care?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of things. Well, first of all, we think the outcomes data is huge. I think it's within communities, and you know, this is really one of the solutions that can help with some of the outcomes we want to keep driving to reduce morbidity and mortality for moms and babies. We are doing a ton of work in doulas in our different states and our markets, and we are doing a very large grant with CVS Foundation, really about training, but about integration within the healthcare system, and then really trying to get into the community about, and in the postpartum space, I should say that too. And then really trying to get feedback on how do we continue to grow this as, you know, really as a business in a lot of ways, right? So how do we keep it as a sustainable for doulas? So that's a lot on the advocacy side. We really have to work on policies for that reimbursement, just as you talk, and how do we source and keep sustaining, you know, OBGYNs there's a big discussion about burnout, right? For providers right now. And so thinking about doulas in the long term, that we need them now and need them more than ever. So how do we continue to make sure that they financially are secure, but also that we are supporting them in the right ways going forward? So that's a big grant, that multi-year grant that we're doing with the CVS, but we're doing a lot of advocacy as well at the state level across the country. But we're also just looking at a lot of projects about how can we continue to work with doulas to help disseminate some of the information and education that we're promoting, right, across our both postpartum as well as It Starts With Mom, which is where we are now, and really trying to get, you know, drive that across all of our markets with our doula work.
I love that you mentioned burnout for OB-GYNs. And I mean, when we look at providers, we see that in so many areas, but especially for birth workers of all types. So Sanyika, for you, how do you protect yourself so that you don't experience burnout? And I mean, if you can talk about, have you seen an increase in business in the last few years? I mean, are you finding yourself working more and having to be mindful so as to not burn out?
Yes, I'll break that down. So being that I've been a doula for 7 years total and 5 years full time, I feel like generally when people start douling, they just want to doula their heart out. Like, take clients, just take. And then you're like, wait a minute, but wait, what am I doing for Christmas? Or what about my family vacation? So I have learned to navigate that. Honestly, when somebody comes on, we're having a consultation, I'll let them know if I do have an upcoming vacation. I let them know that I do have a backup for them. I had let them know that they will meet the backup while I'm out of town. And if should they go into labor while I'm out of town, that this is the person that will absolutely take care of them. My backups are vetted. I would have them at my own birth. So it's kind of like we're a team working together, just being backups for each other. And I did have to learn how to navigate that, because I was just taking clients and not being cognizant of, oh, my kids are off for summer break and I might want to go somewhere, and how to navigate that. And honestly, being a little afraid to be upfront with people saying, oh, I'm going to be on vacation. But just then realizing, like, they're either going to hire you, they're going to bring you onto your team because they like what you have to offer, or they're not. And I'm okay with that too, because at the end of the day, traveling is really, really important to me. And so as much as I love doula, I also need to travel. And so I had to navigate a way to have both. Going back to navigating burnout, taking some time away post-birth. Some of my post-birth rituals is making sure I go to a chiropractic appointment. I do have a mental health therapist on board for me if I need to reach out, because birth, whether, to be honest, there's still going to be some traumatic births in the doula world, and you have to learn how to process that. And without processing that, that can be a really big part of some people's decision on why they choose not to move forward.
And Kayla, for you, I mean, when you are talking to someone who maybe has never heard about a doula before, or they're just finding out, what's your pitch? How do you explain to them what you do and let them know that they have options?
Right. You know, when someone comes to me and says, I'm looking into getting a doula, I always tell them, hi, like, do consulting for so many different ones. Have a consultation for many different doulas and pick from there. You know, don't just go, I'm going to get this one and go right ahead, you know, and answering or asking a lot of those questions that are very important in the consultation with the doula is very, very important, you know, like what kind of birth do you support? What birth don't you support? All those kinds of things.
Yeah. Kayla, is there anything that you want to add about the role, the importance, the benefit of doulas?
There are so many benefits, you know. We can decrease a lot of things, you know, medical interventions, unnecessary medical interventions, C-section rates, all those kinds of things. And I think that's amazing.
Sanyika, is there anything you want to add?
Yes. Kind of going back to the postpartum question, I wanted to respond that one thing that I absolutely love to do is I like to draw a herbal sitz bath for my moms. And allow them to just sit in it. I tell them you have to stay there from at least 10 to 15 minutes. And honestly, that's the first time that they've kind of just been separated from their child. They just had a moment to breathe and maybe, you know, process things and just think like, just take a deep breath and not have to worry about somebody crying because I've got the baby if nobody else is around. And then I'm able to kind of clean up their home if they need that, or if it needs a little bit of TLC. And I do also offer bone cone belly binding, which really helps in, you know, after we've all had children. So your belly is very jelly afterwards, right? So just kind of making the mom feel whole again, supporting the hips and the back. And I really enjoy doing those postpartum services because it wasn't something that I had and something that I didn't know about, but was actually looking for. So to be able to offer that to clients is really big to me. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is the access. You know, doula, while I love to say doula isn't a luxury, it is also a cost, right? So having insurance cover it at a sustainable rate is a very important part to allowing doulas to keep on trucking, if you will. And in the interim, some things that I like to do is I accept HSA and FSA for my clients. And then I also offer payment plans. So no, you don't have to do a full bulk if you are coming on board, but we could break this up into payments to just make it a little bit more easier for you to get doula support.
Oh, I'm sure that's really helpful for clients. And Dr. Cherot, I mean, if you can just sort of button it all up, because there's so many things I would want to ask you about, of course, but there are a lot of times that, you know, medical providers may not like when a woman comes in with the doula and can make that sort of contentious or uncomfortable. Right. What needs to be done all around to make this more common practice, to see doulas, for women to have that sort of support?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think doulas really provide an incredible, you know, way for information to be dispersed, for education, you know, about childbirth, about postpartum, and about the big day. I think it fosters communication, and that alone, right? And knowledge is power. So I got excited about kind of that role. You're absolutely right. I think all of us we want to be a care team, and that needs to be the approach. So that whether a doula is fostering kind of the, you know, being the advocate for the patient, right, is really kind of the role that as well, right? They're that helpful voice as well. And so that the goal is to achieve a positive outcome, healthy mom, healthy baby. And what does that path look like? And so I think that's the holistic approach that I like to think about, that doulas can have in the whole care team, whether it's with a midwife, whether it's with you know, an OBGYN, I think it's having open and honest conversations that are super important. If you're bringing a doula, I think sharing that with your provider is really important. And I love when I find a great doula, I'm like handing out her card everywhere, right? Right. And so I want, because that's where we want to have that whole holistic approach that supports the patient, that gets the outcome that we want it to be. And I think that role of the doula is fundamental. That I clearly, with the outcomes we want to achieve for moms, there's a clear role that we all need to have together. It's a partnership for that patient. And I think it's a lattice of support is really and fundamentally where I think of in my mind. And I said, it should not be adversarial. It should be jointly, this is where we're trying to get to. And so whether it's, a doula's adding an ice pack, right? Or right? Or a bath. I was thinking about that bath, thinking I'll take one of those, please. Right? We probably all thought about it. I was like, oh, that would have been great. So and cleaned up my house, like thinking about all of how this happens, but holistically, as from the March of Dimes, how do we support this as an integral part of the healthcare system? And that's how I see it. And the path forward that doulas have for moms and babies.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies, so much for being a part of this conversation, because I mean, we all know that motherhood is so many things, and it is a lot, but it is so beautiful, and every mom out there deserves to have the best head start possible, and doulas are doing a lot of that work to make that possible. So thank you both. Thank you all. Thank you to Sanyika Williams, Kayla, Natalie, and Dr. Elizabeth Cherot. Moms are the heart and soul of our world. Every mom-to-be deserves the best, especially when it comes to their health and well-being. March of Dimes, through its It Starts With Mom, is here to educate you with reliable, up-to-date information for you to take charge of your pregnancy and motherhood journey. We know pregnancy can be a wild ride, but you are not alone. You're never alone. So be a part of a powerhouse community that understands and uplifts each other. It All Starts With Mom is always available on the go as a go-to resource packed with information that you need, from planning to pregnancy to postpartum. For more information, you can visit itstartswithmom.org. Again, I'm Janai Norman. So glad to be with you today, having this conversation. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Janai.
Thank you.
Bye.